Hi, I'm Dominic Patton from Deadline Hollywood, and thanks for joining us again for Next Generation TV. I'm honored to have today with us Aisha Hinds of Underground and of Shots Fired.
It is my honor to be with you today.
I thank you for that. You're a double dipper this season.
I am.
What is that like, and how does that actually work for you logistically?
You know, it's extraordinary, and I think it was a blessing, the schedule and the way that it worked out. I was able to shoot Shots Fired in the early months of summer. We began production, I believe, probably in March, and we completed in August. And very quickly behind that, Underground started its season in late August. And so I probably had about a 3-week period to sort of wash off myself from Pastor Janae and move into Harriet Tubman, which when I look back on it, it was actually one of those things that I needed a little bit of Pastor Janae to move into Harriet.
How so? Because I was going to say, because there are elements of those characters. I mean, obviously Harriet Tubman, who you play in season 2 of Underground, one of the great icons, true American heroes. Mm-hmm. But there are elements of the pastor from Shots Fired that you see in Harriet, and I don't just mean a certain vigilance and stridence either.
Yeah.
What do you find as an actor?
The two women, you know, and myself included, are two women who are guided by a spiritual compass. You know, that is, I think, the foundational aspect of these women and myself, and I think that is the thing that sort of drew these characters to me and I to them. I think that Pastor Janae is beautifully the manifestation of the sacrifices that Harriet Tubman made.
Harriet Tubman was not 12 months of the year freeing slaves. She spent a lot of the time raising money, raising awareness, which, you know, all those abolitionist houses and tunnels had to be built and paid for by someone. Mm-hmm. That episode was amazing, and I wanted to get a sense from you, because it really was more like theater, taking from that element of your background. What was that like, working on that episode for you?
It was, I still struggle to find the words to really encapsulate what that experience was for me. As an artist, by all means, it was an incredible, exciting venture and challenge to bring theater onto television. You know, in that way, I applaud WGN, I applaud Misha, Joe, and Anthony for elevating the medium, where they were challenging the medium and knowing the risk involved, you know, because this is a young network, you know, by no means they have no track record to tell them that this is gonna work, you know, and so I think in the same way, Harriet Tubman's spirit is one where she knows the dangers involved, but she's gonna take the risk anyway, because the reward on the other side is that important. And I think what was the reward in this is that they were telling her story in a way that honored her. And I knew how important her image on television was for right now, for this generation, for older generations even. You know, the first film that I ever saw, I was introduced to the medium of film by watching Gandhi. My father took me as a child to watch Gandhi, and I, in the same way, thought Ben Kingsley was Gandhi, you know, and for many years, you know, I didn't make the distinction until I realized that he's an actor, you know, but what it did was it introduced me to this figure, it introduced me to the sacrifices that he made and was willing to make, and I think that is an important message for today, you know, to show people to the humanity of Harriet Tubman so that they can see that within them is a Harriet Tubman, is a spirit of a revolutionary, is a spirit of someone who will selflessly make the sacrifices necessary to take care of our country, you know, in a bigger conversation. We seem to have come so far, but yet we have so far to go, you know, and that as we reflect on Harriet Tubman's pursuit of freedom, which for her, she sort of packaged it in small victories, whether it was you know, a drop of sugar, or whether it was, you know, the ability to get off one day from, you know, being on the plantation. She realized, you know, soon after that, you know, freedom meant such a different thing, you know, and it wasn't limited to this geographic point on a map, because once she had reached Philadelphia, you know, no one was there to show her how to function in freedom, you know, and so she wanted to go back and get her family, and that was a sense of freedom for her as well. But it educates us to let us know that we are still, all of us, still sort of in pursuit of freedom.
Every time I got hit, I took it as an opportunity for defiance, to not give anyone the reaction they expected. And then I thought, again, maybe that there was freedom. But I couldn't reconcile why something everybody held so precious come from pain. There had to be an easier way to it than that.
Her spirit completely consumed me, inhabited me, and, you know, pushed out her story. I was just the vessel. And I always, you know, reference that though it's lauded as a solo performance, it's a solo performance as much as childbirth is a solo performance. You know, a mother needs all of the components around her to help push forward that child. And that is what our crew was. That is what our background was. That is what Anthony was. That is what Misha and Joe and everyone who was involved behind and in front of the scenes, they helped to push that out. And the major presence was Harriet Tubman's spirit. You know, she was guided by her spirit in a way that still blows my mind, you know, to know that she could not read a single word of the Bible, you know, which is foundational, I think, for people who are nurturing their spiritual growth in their spiritual life. To know that she was unable to ever do that in her lifetime, but yet she was able to nurture a relationship with God whereby she felt like she heard from God. He would guide her and you know, let her know when he was present, and let her know when danger was present, and, you know, guide her footsteps on an alternate path. Like it completely blew my mind, and it completely challenged me to dig into another depth of my own spirituality and my own spiritual walk, and to realize that I need to rely a whole lot more on that. I had always sort of thought about my spirituality as something separate from my art for a long time, as something personal, you know, and not something that I would put on display, you know, but something that I relied on, but not necessarily something that I would have conversations about. And so while I sort of kept it in my prayer closet, if you will, here was two opportunities, I think, with Pastor Janae and Harriet Tubman to deliberately dig into the depths of my spirituality and rely on it and actually articulate it through these characters.
This season has really been the one when you've really come to the fore as an artist. But a lot of people, of course, know you from True Blood. Many people on network television knew you from Under the Dome and Detroit 187. And of course, you're going to be in the Godzilla sequel. Yeah. But one thing that came out of this year is you worked repeatedly with Anthony Hemingway. And you know, I've seen that there's a strong bond and relationship between the two of you. As an artist, as an actor, on that side of the camera, what is it like to have a friend, I guess, on the other side, repeatedly on different shows? Because Anthony worked on Shots Fired and, of course, on Underground.
It's a beautiful blessing. I met Anthony on True Blood, and we became friends from there. He was such a safe place for me. He just gave me a place to absolutely thrust myself into the work and fall and know that he would be there to catch every single part of me if I broke down in the middle of it all. You know, he came to me the first day that we were shooting. I get so emotional talking about him.
No.
And
do you want to stop for a second?
No, it's fine. The first day that we were shooting that 3-day
when you were doing Minty.
Yeah. And he walked into my trailer, and you know, and at this point, you know, you make the distinction between Anthony, my friend, and Anthony, the director. And so, you know, they come and they knock on the director is going to come and he wants to talk to you. And so I'm like, okay, you know, and I'm ready to have the conversation.
And you've been working on the script, which, by the way, we should tell people, you only had that script for just over a week.
Yes.
I mean, you pulled that, what, there was like 45 pages?
Yes, it was 45 pages. Anthony came into the trailer, and I expected us to have sort of that pre-conversation about, you know, how we're going to tackle the day, you know, what are the beats in the piece, how we're going to shoot, where we're going to stop, and he did none of that. He came into the trailer, he took my hands, he held it, and he began to pray for me. And I remember closing my eyes, and I had never at this point prayed with Anthony. If nothing else, if I could not rely on myself, if I could not rely on, you know, how much work that I had put into these 45 pages, I knew that there was a spirit that was going to show up, and it was going to be what it was going to be. And so we walked onto set, and I was walking towards the sound cart because I was ready for my safety, you know, they had set up these safety nets for me. And so I walked over it to get the earpiece that they would be giving to me, because we had said that if I go up on a line, Misha would be behind the monitor and she would, you know, read the passage where I, you know, so I could sort of find my place again. So they put the earpiece in my ear, and I hear this feedback, and I'm like, what is this feedback? So I asked the sound guy to turn it down, and he was like, I can't turn it down. It's standard. That's going to be in there until Misha speaks. And it was a reflex my hand just reached up to my ear and pulled it out and handed it off to him. And I was like, wow. Every single safety net that I could have wanted in place, even down to, you know, I had been asking and begging for the script months in advance, wanting the rehearsal time that you get for theater. I didn't have that. I didn't, you know, we talked about teleprompters, that went away. And so all of these things that were set up as my safety net had been pulled out from under me. But what was present was Anthony and his grace and Harriet's spirit.
Well, the spirit was in the room. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very, 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 very much.